The University of Michigan came out with some concerning data last week suggesting the rich are getting richer and the rest of America is getting poorer at an accelerating pace. Michigan's consumer sentiment survey is one of the gold standards in economic statistics, and the most recent numbers showed sentiment is bifurcating by income level. The top third is soaring, spending like there's no tomorrow, while the bottom third is falling, counting pennies and clipping coupons. This is odd. Historically, consumer sentiment moves together, all boats rising and falling more or less at the same pace. But not so at the moment. The rich are now doing better and better. The poor are doing worse and worse. So what is happening? And the answer is simple. The Fed. The way the Fed channels money into the economy targets asset prices first, while federal spending slides hundreds of billions to crony businesses, from banks to green boondoggles to now cluster munitions. I mentioned Cantillon effects the other day, how money creation redistributes wealth to the rich because the money goes first into asset markets. Then the money trickles down layer by layer, each layer losing a permanent chunk of wealth. In the kind of inflation we've been seeing, by the time it gets to workers, it transferred about 8% of wealth. By the time it gets to the elderly living on Social Security, it lost even more, unless those pensions were fixed, of course, in which case they get nothing. To illustrate, according to the Fed's own numbers, actually over half of stocks are held by the top 1% of Americans, while the bottom 90% of Americans own just 11% of stocks. The bottom 50% of Americans, incidentally, own just 0.6%. That means for every $100 the Fed pumps into assets, 53 go to the top 1%, 89 go to the top 10%, and just 60 cents goes to the bottom half. Incidentally, this is getting much worse. A generation ago, the bottom 90% owned about twice as much, about 22%, while the bottom 50% owned about 2.5 times as much. Of course, that was all before the Fed went on its money printing rampages after the 2001 dot-com crash, then the 2008 financial crisis, and then, of course, the COVID lockdowns. Together, these dropped the share of stocks held by the non-rich by over half. In fact, they kneecapped the non-rich across the board, including bank accounts, housing, and pensions, with the total share of wealth held by the bottom 90% dropping from 40% in 1990 to just 31% today, and falling. We saw this wealth transfer in dramatic form during the COVID lockdowns, with $9 trillion in central bank spending, driving a $5 trillion rise in the wealth of the world's billionaires alone. And this year has been a level up in the wealth vortex as the bank bailouts sent money directly into the accounts of rich depositors and the banks themselves. In short, the rich get taken care of, the rest of us get higher prices. So will it change? Unfortunately, like so much in government, the beneficiaries are powerful and the victims are not. Bankers love it, corporations love it, the rich love it, and their senators on speed dial truly love it. While normal people have media to explain how it's all for the greater good, how without trillion-dollar handouts to rich people, society would collapse. So no, until something major breaks, it won't change. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.